you've got to be proud of them sometimes when they have those bad rounds. Be like, hey, look, commend them what they did well. I know you were really struggling out there, but I love the way you just kept your head up and you were talking to your partners at the end and you kept a great attitude. I love that. Try to pick out a positive from it. And then we can also say like, okay, well, next time maybe you got to think about that shot into that pin and what do you think about it? And have an open conversation with them rather than just, hitting them with the hammer as soon as they walk in the car.
Welcome to The Golf Parent, where you get access to the best minds in junior golf. Today, my guest is Mark Govier, an advanced fellow coach and tour coach at Altus Performance in Dallas, one of the most respected high-performance environments in the game. Mark has coached players at the highest levels, including 2 Olympians, and he spent years in Dallas working alongside Cameron McCormick, the longtime coach of 3-time major champion Jordan Spieth. Before that, Mark built a reputation as one of the UK's most in-demand coaches, working with elite amateurs and pros across tours, and also earned the Fellow of PGA recognition for his coaching impact. And what I personally love about this conversation is it's not just quick tips. Mark gives you a real roadmap for development, how elite juniors practice with structure, why self-coaching is the key, and how emotional stability shows up on the scoreboard, and also what parents can do, especially in the car ride home, to help their kids grow instead of adding unnecessary pressure. All right, without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Mark Govier. Mark, welcome to the Golf Parent Podcast. This has been long overdue. I know we tried to get it on recording months ago, and now here, finally, we've got you on the podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
I appreciate it, Ryan. Yeah, excited to speak to you. I love the work you're doing on with your podcast. Some great information for parents out there. So yeah, just honored to be on here.
Okay, well, you're not the only one honored. I'm the one that's actually honored because I'm sitting here across from, and I'm going to butcher this. I'm not going to get it right, but you were recently awarded, I think last year, the Advanced Fellow PGA Superstar Award of Excellence of the best teachers in the world. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, maybe you added a little bit on to the end, but yeah, I got the I was awarded the Advanced Fellow of the PGA Coach. So yeah, very honored by the PGA to be awarded that. It's just for my expertise in coaching over the last 30 years of I was talking about you before we got on air, so turning a slightly older age tomorrow. So and it's been 30 years of coaching, so 30 years of experience, and that was a nice award to have. But yeah, all good stuff.
But but you have a specialty that not every coach has. Like, you specialize in the developmental path of basically juniors all the way up to the pro levels. Like, that's kind of your specialty, is how to actually develop kids into adults and every path, I guess every step along the path to get there. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So basically taking kids even from sort of, I suppose, a foundational level, where they're sort of learning their basic movement skills. So there's the first step, and trying to create a great foundation for them, because I feel like if they've got a great foundation technically, that does set them up well. I always feel like if they're not technically as good as they should be, or technically functional, you're shackling them down the line, and that will catch up for them. And then eventually then we start to go more into the performance arena, how to perform correctly, what their best performing self looks like. So all the little things that are going to, I always say, add the layers in, the softer skills that sometimes we don't see until they're in a play environment. We're trying to equip them as best as possible to be able to go out there and perform their best.
Yeah, I'm fascinated about that. I mean, you're the guest for the Golf Parent Podcast, because every parent listening right now is trying to figure out the best, most efficient way to, help their junior develop and to not screw it up. Like, let's just be honest. Like, there's so much conflicting information out there. So let's start with that first developmental stage. What age would you like to see a junior come to you to work with you? And ideally, what sports, if any, would you like them to have been playing before that kind of helps them to become an actual athlete? Would you like that early specialization? Like, where do you stand with just maybe that first stage? What would be an ideal situation from your point of view?
Okay, yeah, great question. I mean, this is a big one, isn't it? Like, I see kids specializing at such a young age now. Personally, I like kids to play multiple sports for as long as they possibly can. So I'm not a big believer in a kid specializing at 9 years old, because I think that the skills they learn from playing other sports are definitely transferable. And I believe that, and the evidence shows that kids that play multiple sports for a longer period of time generally tend to be more rounded athletes. So the first thing I would say is let them play as much as they can for as long as they can. And then when they get to maybe middle school, like, like grade seven, grade, like going into high school. Well, obviously at that point, especially if they're in America, they're probably going to need to specialize then if they're really going to look on to go on to college. So the first thing is don't pigeonhole them too soon. Let them go play multiple sports. Let them play team sports. There's a lot of great transferable skills that will come from that. As for regards to the individual coming to me, it very much depends on the individual. Now, I've got 6-year-olds. I could show you some stuff you look at my Instagram that are like mini tour players. It's incredible, like how well they move, how well they take on information. That's not the norm. Okay. So not every child is going to be ready to come for golf coaching at 5, 6 years old. Some might come at 8, 9, 10 years old or older. There's no set time. I suppose the thing is you'll know by the child because sometimes some kids are very good at taking on information earlier. Some kids, it takes them a little bit longer. But I think, if you can get them as a ballpark around about 7, 8 years old, starting off some basic foundation skills, that would be great.
Hmm. Okay. I love that because I mean, as parents, we always feel like we're too late. So we always, so
Yeah.
those parents that are listening that maybe you have a 10, 11, 12-year-old, it's not too late as long as they've been basically being athletic up until this point. Let's
Hmm.
go to that for a second. Going back to the previous sports that we're seeing kids play, I know there's a ton of research out there and you've got your own research for over 30 years. If you could pick maybe 3 sports that you would be putting your younger child in, and maybe one martial art or maybe one wild card or some
Yeah.
other thing that you think would be benefit. Maybe it's archery. Maybe it's the aim small, miss small. I don't know. But what would
Mm.
you say? Well, what would be put you on the spot? 3 sports and one wild card.
Yeah, I think things like that create power are good. So if your kids are into athletics, being able to, run fast and or run well would certainly be a power aspect. If they're doing, the basic and left things, long jump, high jump, all those sort of running. I think those are great skills because they keep you fit, they keep you healthy. They're generally great for power output. Then there will be other sports, then, like, for example, playing a team sport. Like, I think that's really good as well, just because it teaches you skills of being able to deal with adversity, deal with different individuals. And, when we play golf at a high level or any level, we're going to have those difficult moments. So being able to learn those skills would be an important one. And then I think something then that would, um, like obviously everywhere you go, there's going to be different sports, isn't there? So if in America, you're going to be more one-sided to, basketball, football, those sort of baseball. Those are great things. Like I do like baseball. I think there's a lot of transferable skills from that.
Huh.
The ability to use the floor well. It's rotational. So I do think there is some transferable skills from that. For me, if you could throw the ball a long way and jump high, then you're probably going to have a lot of power. So the players that I've dealt with at every level who've maybe been baseball players and pitchers, or they've been a quarterback, they can accelerate their arms extremely fast, and that skill is massively transferable to golf. Because again, if we can accelerate our arms fast, we're probably going to hit the ball a lot further. So I think learning those things, learning to throw a ball, in the back garden, so that it will help you down the line.
Okay, so I heard track and field or something just
Hmm.
general athletics. I heard baseball potentially
Hmm.
as the ideal team sport. You've got
Yeah.
one more slot of a sport, and then you got the wild card.
I mean, I would say something like soccer would be good, just because it's speed, it's agility, it's a team sport. I think that's a really good one to use. And then you've got obviously martial arts. The discipline of that is certainly very similar to golf. So the way to follow a structure, I think that's very much like golf. There it is a lot of process involved with golf, isn't it? So having something like that. Again, if your kid's not into the traditional sports, that would be a good way to go as well.
Love that. Okay, so then as a parent, what can we do then with a younger child that's just being introduced and maybe we're trying to focus on the foundational skill sets of
Mm.
the game? What can we do as a parent to kind of help them or before we bring them to you? Is there something we can do at home that can kind of help maybe, even if it's not even with the golf club in their hand, but is there something that we can do to help create? I mean, what are the foundational skills, I guess, and how can we teach those with or without a golf club?
Okay, so I mean, I think as regards to functional movement stuff, getting your kids to catch balls, being able to change direction, being able to run and sprint. Those are all just good skills that are going to help you as an athlete. So I don't think that's a bad thing. Certainly coordination and hand-eye coordination is a big part of being able to make a good contact, be able to get the ball to go where it needs to go. Certainly athletic ability will help that. There's no doubt about it. But certainly I have seen kids that not necessarily gifted athletes in other sport who become into golf and actually become very, very good at what they do at elite levels. So it's not necessarily that you have to be, hey, if my kid's not a great athlete, that doesn't mean they can't be a great golfer. But, just doing some of those basic skills would be important. Then I think, in the physical golf side of things would be getting them into a very good program. Look for a golf coach or a program that's within your area that can give you great structure and has a track record of success. That's one of the biggest things that I see. Sometimes when I get kids that come in, maybe they just haven't had a great foundation. So it's a little bit more work for them then to get back on track. So again, look in your area at someone who's really, really good, who has a track record of success, has a great program, has a philosophy that's, that gives great feedback to the client and to the parents, so that they know they're moving in the right direction. That I think is one of the biggest things at the beginning is, don't try to freewheel it. Find someone good and stick with them and sort of continue to develop that kid's skill.
So if I was to give you a blank piece of paper right now and ask you just to like write down
Mm.
the ultimate coaching philosophy. Again, I'm putting you on the spot here a lot. I don't know
Yeah.
why I'm being so mean to you here right now, but I know you got the wisdom. I know you got the nuggets here.
Mm.
What would you put? What is a good, like, when we're looking and interviewing golf coaches and looking at programs, like, what is a philosophy in your opinion that you think gives the parent and the child the best chance of success throughout the entire process? Hey, golf parents, quick pause here. If you're enjoying this conversation and getting value from it, do me a quick favor. Hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening. It helps us reach more parents who are on the same journey as you, raising the next generation of great golfers. All right, that's it. And now, back to the show.
Okay, well, I mean, look, you've got these different aspects of news. So first of all, you need good technical skill. You need to move the club well. You need the pupil to understand what they're doing. And I think a great golf coach will not just teach, because teaching is just giving information, isn't it? And then there's the coaching, which is working with the athlete to develop them. It's a two-way conversation. So first of all, I would be looking for someone who's going to build great skills for the player, their technical skills. So they're going to move well and they're going to understand what they're trying to achieve. Okay, that's an important part of it. We always try to get our kids to be able to really understand, become like great self coaches, and I think that's a separator. So having a philosophy of, for me, would be teach great skills, let the athlete really become an amazing self-coach, because majority of the time when they're out there, they are on their own. They're going to have a small amount of time with us. The more autonomous they become, the more they can connect the dots and make corrections, the better athlete they're going to become, and the better they're going to be able to make correction in play. And that, I think, is a big separator for me with how I go about coaching. Is it's very heavy on getting the player to understand, because I think the more they understand, the more they can go, okay, that weak right shot, that normally counts because the first movement gets inside. Or when I hit it heavy, I know that's because maybe I get a bit lateral my first move. So when they hit that first heavy shot, they got an instant correction. And that is a huge separator. Most clients don't know, so they're always going back to coach. Hey, I was doing this. What was I doing wrong? And the coach tells them. And that's not coaching. And that doesn't equip them for the ability to make those corrections in play and become more autonomous. So for me, the philosophy is very much like, make that player a great self-coach. And if I've done that, I've done my job. Hey, I don't want to lose my job, but I don't want to make myself redundant. But at the same point, I haven't done my job if that kid can't do that. And we have kids at 8, 9, 10 years old that can do that better than tall players can.
I love the distinction between a teacher and a coach, because we often don't really think about the distinction. We look at them almost as synonyms of the same thing. But you're right, a teacher is somebody that's transferring information, but a coach is someone that develops you. And so obviously a part of that is being a teacher, but there's so much more that a coach actually does. And it's nice to hear that distinction between a teacher and a coach, because I know we don't often think of it.
Yeah, I think that's part of the. I mean, I think if you watch any of the guys from Altus, great, or just great coaches in general, not just saying Altus, but just great coaches in general. They don't just give you the answer. And I think I watch that a lot sometimes with teaching. It's they hit a bad shot. Hey, you did this. Hey, you did that. And they're just giving them the answer all the time. And sometimes at the beginning they need a little bit of that because they don't have that ability to recognize it. But what we always try to get them to do is we would say, "Hey, when you hit that shot right, why is that? Can you tell me why?" And then the first few times they can't do it, and then eventually they can say, "Oh, is it because like normally I make that lateral move?" Yeah, it is. Okay, great. So what are we going to do in the next one? Let's make a correction. So imagine if they can have that self dialogue and be able to connect the dots, which is definitely a separator. They can then make a bad round good straight away, or they can make the best of the round they can. And for me, that is one of the biggest differences at the elite level.
So speaking about elite and moving our junior towards that end of the spectrum, if I
Mhm,
heard you correct at the beginning, the stage one was more the developmental foundational skills. Give
mhm.
me an athlete and let me start teaching the foundations of golf to them. The second stage, did I hear you correct that it was more understanding the strategy of like how to play in the course? I go like instead of me maybe guessing or using my faulty memory, what is the next stage then that you would look at?
Okay, so you've got the technical skills, so you want to keep moving that, and that doesn't matter if you're the best player in the world. You're always going to have some technical intervention that you're making, but really, then as we start to move through the levels, we're then looking at like how does this athlete practice? First of all, what are they doing practice-wise that is making it more gamified, making it more like a game of golf, making it more challenging, and then also having some way to test that skill. So in the pure practice side of things it changes from this block style practice that we see a lot of golfers doing, just pounding it out in the dirt, hitting balls out into the field, and really there's no intent in what they're doing. And then
Were you
adding
watching
in
my
then,
last driver range session? Because it's like,
I
it's
mean,
pretty
everyone's
much
the same.
exactly what I do.
Everyone's the same. I mean, I was like it as a player. I used to love practice, but I would just hit balls for hours and hours and hours and probably achieve not a lot.
No.
But now, as I've got older and wiser and more gray hairs, I start to understand that, I can become a lot more efficient, or players can become a lot more efficient. So we have the technical stage of practice, which would have some block. Then we would look at then, hey, how are we testing? What are we doing skill wise? So we would get them then into more of a gamified, randomized practice, more situational, getting them to adapt, getting them to be able to go from one ball to the next and make a quick reaction. Because that's golf. We're not going to have 5 goes at everything. So practice wise, we set up like a practice plan for them that would really, as soon as they turn up to do a putting session, they know every little part of it. Hey, when I turn up, first of all, I'm going to get my wild putt out. I'm going to do my form work. I'm going to get my gates out. Then I'm going to do a circle drill. I'm going to do some lag putting drills. And then I'm going to test that skill with these skills at the end. So that would be the basis of starting to take them into more gamified practice that would look more like a golf tournament. And then all we got, I mean, we can go on and on and on. Then we got all the layers of, okay, well, what's the best performing self look like? What do they eat like? What do they sleep like? What do they do the morning of a tournament? How do they react? What are the characteristics like body language wise? How do they react to bad shots, good shots? I mean, that's all the extra layers we're adding in as we go along.
Let's go back because you had mentioned, an example of a practice session, and I didn't quite catch the first three things before doing lag putting and all the rest of it. What were the first three things that they're going to get out of the way at the beginning, then moving into the next stages? Like, what would an ideal 1 hour practice session be set up like, and what would it look like?
Okay, great. So if I put this into a very simple formula, now it's going to evolve for different players at different times of year, what they're working on. But if you just went into very simple thirds, you would have an hour, you would have 20 minutes of form. You maybe have your form station down. So if you're doing ball striking, you have your alignment rods down for your body alignment, for your ball position, for your face angle. You might have an alignment rod in incline plane to work on first move, or you might be using certain training aids, as a feedback. You would film it, you would review it, or you would send it to your coach if you have the access to do that. So that would be the form part of the practice, making sure you are moving well, you're following the game plan that your coach has set out for you, whatever that is. And then, very importantly, getting feedback. And feedback is key when you practice. The feedback would be I can use training aids. I've got a feedback station here. I could film it and I could send it to my coach for further feedback or someone that is guiding you on that side of things. So the first part of the session is always the technical form checks. Because I think if your form is good, you're more likely to see your skill be good. If your form sucks, you're probably going to see your skill suck as well. So we have to do the first bit of like check your form, and then you would go then into the skill part of the practice, which would then be more randomized, different shots, different situations, playing it with the routine, playing it like it's a golf tournament, not just hitting the ball, move up, hit another ball. You would follow full process. And then finally, the last third then would be test the skill. So you've done your technical, you've done your randomized practice, it looks more gamified, and then I'm going to test my skill. It's going to tell me how good I am at that. And for example, that could be in a very simple terms. If I was doing short game, I might play par 18, 9 different locations, 3 easy, 3 medium, 3 hard. You got a chip and you got a putt, and you'd score the score for that for those 9 holes. A good goal score would be 21. Or you could do a proximity the hole test, 9 different shots, different locations. You count the amount of feet for every hole, and then that would give you then a total proximity for the 9 holes, which you might want to do like 80 feet for 30 yards and in. So that's what the tour players would be looking to achieve. Now, it doesn't matter what it is. It would just be something of where you are at the moment. You know, maybe it's 120 feet the first time you do it. Doesn't matter. But if you keep doing it, fingers crossed, you're seeing, because of the way you're practicing, you're seeing an improvement in the proximity. Or you're doing putting, you would see an improvement in that test. Or if you did a TrackMan test, etc., if you have access to launch monitors, you would be able to quantify that skill.
Are you a fan of the kids journaling and kind of keeping track of how well they're doing and like doing the same type of drill so they can see that progress over time?
Without a doubt. I mean, this is what I do with my clients. They have a practice plan that they follow, and this is from 6, 7 years of age. If they're at the age where they can, they're at that stage. They're obviously, further along the development stage. But certainly as they get into their teens, they have a plan that they follow, and they would then quantify that. So they can add it into an Excel, which I can view, or they might even message me, or they would write it down for themselves and send me a screenshot. Depending on the client, everyone's really different. Some are very tech savvy. Some like to write it down. So it doesn't really matter. But you're bang on what you're saying. You have to write it down. You have to quantify it to see the pattern that's forming. And then the other thing about the journaling, which I love, I think is such an important and impactful thing, is after every round, after every practice session, write things down that you did really well and that you think you learned, and also write things down that you maybe feel like you could adjust to do better next time. It doesn't have to be all negative. You've got to praise yourself for the positive things you do as well. But also we have to be reflective and go, hey, look, when I played really well, or when I had that great practice session, what was I doing? And when I played poorly or I had a really poor practice session, what was I doing differently there, which would affect my performance? And that could be within the session. Okay, so what's happening within the session? You're on your phone, you're not focused, you're talking to your friends or whatever it is, and you're not really engaged in what you're doing. You're just hitting balls into a field. So that could be stuff that could be adjusted. Or it could even be in the tournament situation. What was I doing the morning of the tournament? Was I up late? Again, was I playing video games late at night? Did I have a poor breakfast? Did I not have breakfast? These are all the little things you're trying to learn from constantly and just until eventually you find your formula. And that's one of the big things we're always trying to do with our players, is to get them to understand their formula of what makes them play well.
I love that because that leads me to my, the final stage, which is, how do we help our kids become the best versions of themselves? And this is both on and off the golf course. But I like that, finding their unique formula, like something that's just for them. Let's talk about that. Does that change? Is it a formula like in the moment, or is it like kind of like a set, like almost like a personality test where you're like, this is the thing that works best for me, and it probably is going to work best for me for the next 20 years?
Without a doubt. I mean, I think you're right. It's always evolving. By the time, hopefully, you're at the most elite level, whether that's, for example, playing D1 golf, or you're a mini tour player, or you're a PJ tour player, or you're a major winner, whatever level that may be, you're constantly trying to learn. And I think that's the thing that the best players have at every level. They're insatiable thirst to try to know what to do better or what to do to make them perform better. So you're doing this by over a period of time. So like you said, you have to be reflective, because if you don't reflect, how are you ever going to be aware of the things that make you perform? Or how are you ever going to be aware of the things that don't make you perform? So over a period of time, every child or every junior or every player is different. Now, if you look at the guys on tour, you will have players that are interacting with the crowd, and they're having fun and they're bouncing around and they're talking, and that's their style. Imagine like a Lee Trevino or Minwoo Lee or that type of character. They want to be more involved. It's the way that maybe with their nerves they cope with it. So as a characteristic, that's one way. And then you have the other players, like you think of Tiger in his heyday or the Faldos of the world. They were much more insular. They wanted to be in their own world. I know Rory talked about this in the last round of the Masters. You know, he didn't want to interact with Bryson, who was the complete opposite. He wanted to interact. That's his style. That's what suits him. So Rory just wanted to keep himself on it to himself. There's no right, there's no wrong. Okay. Now, those guys have both got majors, but they both have slightly different approaches. Now, that's something that guaranteed in that situation, Rory made an adjustment from errors he's made in the past. That he think he got distracted by talking to partners. I'm not saying that's what it was, but I'm just saying that could be something that he made an adjustment to be like, hey, that didn't make me perform the last time I was in the Masters as in the lead. I need to be more in my zone. I need to stick with my caddy. So that's something with all the players we're constantly trying to be aware of. And if they can reflect and they can start pinpointing little things like, hey, I did that last time I played well. I'm going to start doing that more often. I'm going to start being like that more often. I'm going to start practicing like that more often. I'm going to start trying to go to sleep at that time. I'm going to start trying to eat that way as I go around. I'm going to start trying to react this way when things don't go right in tournaments. And then eventually it's like, that's me. That's what it looks like. Now that could be very different to the other player, but it's all about what makes the individual perform.
As a coach, have you recognized certain patterns that seem to be universal? There's going to be nuance, like
Mm-hmm.
diet and stuff that may be very, very individualized. But are there certain things that you've seen that you're like, yeah, I could have told you that that's definitely a thing that's going to make you play better? Is there anything that's maybe a few things that are unconventional, not just obviously staying up late and playing video games? Obviously, that's going to affect
Yeah.
you, but things that are maybe a little bit outside the box that you've noticed as a pattern?
Well, I would say the first thing is a pattern, and I think the best players they exactly have that. They just have a pattern. They know what they do and they try to do the same thing. So that's the first pattern is the best players have a ritual they follow. So whatever it is, that's the first separator. Whereas the players that don't perform well, they're just doing different things all the time, and they're expecting the same result. And it's the definition of insanity, isn't it? So I think that's the first thing is that the better players are aware of that and they are trying to create it. So that's the first separator. The biggest thing I would say is a few different things. The best players know how to practice properly. Now maybe they obviously hopefully they've been taught that by great coaching. So they have a way of practicing with those key aspects, the technical, the randomized, and then sort of skill-based training, and then a way of testing it. So they all have that in common. They are all emotionally reactive, as in when they make an error, they can stabilize themselves way quicker than the players that can't. The ones like they're like a volcano, like it's all
Mm.
bubbling, and then all of a sudden there's a massive eruption, and then they can't get the equilibrium back. Now, I always say to players, I don't mind you showing emotion. I have no problem with you showing emotion. As long as you're not helicoptering clubs down the fairway and cussing and making yourself look a fool, it's okay to have some emotion. Okay. Now we got to control that and keep that within check, but it's okay to have emotion. The best players are very, very good after the shot. And we just talked about this in like a zone 4, like after the shot's been played, of recalibrating, whether that's through breathing, whether that's through, ways of just trying to calm their mind as part of a process they would do at the end of the shot. That is definitely a separator. And the other thing I think, which is a real big separator, is their golf IQ. How they strategize their way around the golf course is a huge separator. I watch players at every level, the elite level, miss in terrible places because they don't think clearly before the shot. They don't think the wind's up the left and the downright is dead, and it's Bermuda and you got no green and they miss in the wrong spot. Whereas the other player will think more about the miss. They'll miss it on the good side and suddenly they got the same like distance, but now they got 25-foot of green, they're pitching into the wind and they're doing it from semi-rough, not from heavy Bermuda. So the way that the player strategizes around the golf course, I feel like those are 3 big things. Obviously, the technical skill, we know that. Yeah, if you've got more skill, that's going to help. But those are the big things, certainly in sort of how players go about it, which is a separator.
Yeah, and you're seeing it more and more. I mean, there's so many technology tools and experts that like Scott Fawcett and Decade, and there's
Mm.
this whole thing of just like, hey, think through golf better and you will
Mhm.
score lower. Like it's just that simple. Instead of being very cavalier about it, it's kind of thinking it through. You had
Mhm.
mentioned zone 4 though was a way to kind of think about it. But now I'm curious, what are the other three zones then? I'm assuming zone one is the pre-shot before, or
Spot on. So basically, the way I like to do it is there's four very clear zones, and they're almost like walking into a new room where you're making a new part of your routine. So zone one is, imagine like caddy chat. You're at the golf ball, and you're making the key decisions. You're looking at all the things that are going to affect the ball. So what's it lying like? So first of all, if it's laying well, then you obviously your approach is going to be different compared to sitting down in a heavy rough. So the shot decision is going to change. So what's the lie like? What's the yardage? What's the wind like? Is it cold? Is it hot? Is there elevation? Yeah, are you playing elevation? And then finally, am I amped up? Am I like, I'm on a 3 birdie run here and I'm like coming down the stretch. So that means you're probably going to hit the ball a little bit further than normal. So taking time to do all those key decisions, I guarantee most players, elite juniors, guarantee they're going to forget two of those things. Probably the fact they're amped up will be that won't even be on their mind a lot of the time, or they're gonna forget about the elevation up to the green or something like that. Or it's cold, 65 degrees. They're normally used to playing 100. So the ball's not going to go as far. So I guarantee like they're going to forget one of those two things because they're going to rush the shot. They're going to go into it too quick. So that's zone one. Key decisions, like almost like you've got a Michael Greller there, or you've got a Ted Scott, and you're having a discussion like those guys do, and then you decide, hey, this is a 6 iron. It's normally a 7 iron for me, but I'm uphill. There's a bit of wind, there's a bit of cold, and I'm going to hit this ball on the left side of the green because that's a good miss there. That if I miss it, I've got a good putt in, or I've got an easy chip. So decision making zone one. Then zone two is when you have the golf club, because now you know what you're doing. You're very clear on it. You've made great decisions, and you walk into zone two, and now you rehearse and feel. So this could be your opportunity to work on any technical feels you have. So maybe you're working on something in backswing or something in a downswing or whatever it is, or something in setup. I would say try to feel that prior to the shot. Have that technical sensation if you need it. And then the next thing then would be maybe having some feels that are associated with the shot. So if it was a pick shot, you might be feeling the exact length of swing and speed you're about to put on it. Or if it's a putt, you're feeling the exact length of swing and speed you're about to put on it. So you're using that as an opportunity to feel, rehearse, sense. And then you would look at the target, you would become external, and then you would start to be like, hey, now it's all about where this ball's going. And then you'd walk into zone three, which is the golf ball, and then that's all about the setup, just being the same routine every time. Club will go down, take your grip, open your feet out, look at the target once, look at the target twice, pull the trigger. And that's the big thing that I find changes a lot with players under pressure. Their routine, they take longer, they get faster, they don't do the checkpoints correctly, or they get in there and they become too internal, they focus too much on what they don't want to do, and then as a result, they don't execute well. I think that's something that Tiger talks a lot. There's some great videos out there for anyone who wants to look for these on YouTube. Type in Tiger Woods pre-shot routine. He talks about it quite a lot. He does the same routine from hole 1 to hole 72, regardless of the situation. It doesn't change, particularly over the ball. He does the same thing every time. And he talks about that when he watches players changing their routine, he knows they've been affected, and that makes him happy because he knows he's not going to be affected. So those are the three zones, and the final zone is whatever happens, you got to react to that emotionally the correct way.
I love that. I love the idea of, you said the transition between zone 2 to zone 3 was to get external, was to put, I'm assuming, your consciousness on the target. Can you linger on that a little bit more and kind of explain that, if it was a transition or if that's part of zone 2 or zone 3, but how does that work, and how can we develop that skill a little bit more?
Yeah, totally. And I think this is a big thing. Hey, we have these periods where we're working on stuff with the coach, right? So we're on the practice area and we're doing some form stuff. We might be working on whatever it was, like a backswing movement, right? And there's periods where we need to grind heavier on motion because we're making changes. And what happens when we go on the golf course is sometimes we're not very good at detaching that. And then we get into that final zone and we're either thinking way too much technically, and the target has now become second or third in the chain. So it's now like all I'm thinking about is how to move. Like I'm not even looking at the target. I'm not even thinking about the shot. Or they walk into the shot and they start fearing what could go wrong. What if I hit this left? I hooked it down here on the left-hand side last time. Oh, okay. Well, they've hit it on the green. What if I miss it short? What if this happens? If that college coach is watching me. So what happens is if you don't fill your mind with something to follow, the mind is always processing stuff, isn't it? No, people say like, I don't think about anything. Not possible. Like the mind is always like filling up like a glass. It's always filling up with information. Yeah. It's always thinking about something all the time. So you need to keep your mind focused on steps. And the steps might be setup steps that keep your mind focused on the task in hand, and obviously then looking at the target so I become external. Where if I don't have steps to follow, I'm going to start thinking about stuff in those steps. And that's can be dangerous. Sometimes it can be positive, but I would say the majority of the time it could be negative.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking you're living rent free in my own head, like Tiger used to do to so many opponents. Because I mean, you're definitely you're describing me on the golf course. And again, I'm a
Yeah.
16 handicap weekend warrior. I haven't golfed in 3.5 months. Like but when I'm up there, it's all technical. It's all trying to, what
Yeah.
could go wrong. That muscle memory is the slice. It's not the beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
baby fade or whatever it might be. I'm curious though, when we're about to pull the trigger, you talked about a great pre-shot routine. So it's
Mm-hmm.
you're setting your feet, you're looking, look down twice at the target and go. Where's breathing in that? Do we hold our
Yeah.
breath? Are we
Love
are we
that.
breathing in during the backswing? Are we breathing out? Like, is there any consensus on this, or is this also very individualized?
Okay, individualized, but what I would coach is through the routine, there would, because, like we know that certain situations are going to be stressful. Most times, most golf shots are stressful, aren't they? But certain situations are extremely stressful. Maybe first hole, maybe last hole, maybe hitting a shot under pressure in a match play situation, whatever it is, or it's a hole you don't like. So the sympathetic system is that fight or flight system, isn't it? Like that way of like our fear comes in. Years ago, we would be fearful, could be running away from a saber-toothed tiger. Yeah, it would be something we'd be fearful that way. Now it's a little white golf ball. So what we're trying to do is control that system. Now we would control that system by using things like box breathing. Would be a really good way of doing it. I love that. Like in for four, hold for four, and then out for four through the mouth, like you're blowing out a candle. So it'd be like a and you would do that through your routine, ideally. Okay. The earlier you can do that, the more likely you are to bring that system under control. Now, it doesn't mean you're not going to be still nervous over the ball, but I would be very surprised if it's not slightly better by the time you hit the shot. So the breathing will be the first thing that will be done as the routine. And then going back to your earlier question, really about over the ball, I like the player to be in on the back thing and then out on the forward swing. So they're relieving tension. Most players are, tense and then pierced. And then normally that can lead to sort of contraction and tightness, which can hurt rhythm, can hurt release. So I would prefer it to be that way. But I do have players that, like they just hold their breath, and it doesn't hurt them. But I think if you're the type of person struggling with tension, I would be working more towards that pattern.
And I'm almost connecting two dots I've never connected before. But when it comes to the breathing over the ball, can be another way to anchor that tempo as well. Because if we're almost breathing in a similar way each time with the breathing in and breathing out,
Amen.
that can be a part of our natural rhythm or our natural tempo,
Mm.
which is another great way to kind of keep the swing calm and in control and the way that we want it to be.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that, again, it's like almost like an internal metronome that you could be using is that breathing. It helps control our system. So there's a massive upside on that side of things, which is going to be huge. And then the second part is it's also going to help us, like you said, maybe set that internal metronome of breathing in and breathing out and creating that nice rhythm that way. So again, I only see upsides in it. And I do think the players that do that well, they cope better in pressure situations. And again, that would be something you could even use after the shot in the post routine. Walking down the fairway, you've hit a bad shot, it's gone in the water. Hey, it's golf. We're going to make lots of errors. Sometimes we're going to do everything right, as in preparation, and we still hit a bad shot. So now, how do we react to that shot? Well, that's the bit where that breathing, the post shot routine, putting the club in the bag and trying to let go of the emotion. Very, very difficult. But I do think the more we let players we call them out on it, the more they can be aware of it. Like you just talked about earlier on, that reflection thing, the more they can catch themselves, the more they can react to it quicker. And we always say, well, I always say to players, does the anger help you? And I'm still waiting for a player to say yes. All right, okay. Well, if it's not helping us, can we try to stop doing it? You know, so
Well,
hard to
I
do.
love the idea of letting go of the anger as you're letting go of your club. I've never heard that before, but what a great way as a actual physical trigger to be like, all right, I'm holding this and I'm holding all this anger, but as soon as I kind of let this go, like I put the club back, then that's it. that's I can let it go. And what a great way is just a subtle reminder to be like, okay, move on to the next shot. This club is done. Because
Yeah,
very seldomly
it's
are
a,
you using the same club twice in a row. I mean, and if you are, I
totally.
mean, maybe it's putting or if it's a really bad shot.
Yeah, but it's all those little physical cues that we can use as a way of, letting go of the emotion. I just like that because something they can quantify. Look, I'm gonna squeeze this club head, and I'm gonna put it in, and I'm just gonna let it go, and I'm gonna just do my breathing. And hopefully, by the time I get to the ball, I've come back into planet Earth. That's the other thing that we talk about as well with sort of cues is there's got to be cues for concentration as well. So when you walk into the shot, there's got to be a cue where like, okay, now it's go time. Yeah. And what players are not very good at is either they're not very good at switching on or they're not very good at switching off. Now, being switched on for too long is just as bad as being not switched on, because if you burn out, if you're just constantly like pumped up for the whole round, trying to stay focused, like that's not going to happen. You need to focus when you have the ball. You don't need to focus when you don't have the ball. So don't waste your time focusing when there's no ball in front of you. When you get to the ball, then there's the cue. So the cue could be my glove goes on. Yeah, and there's my cue. Or I might get my rangefinder, and then there's my cue. So when that rangefinder comes out, I always say it's a bit like a torch. The torch is the concentration. Like you got to turn it up, and there's the cue to turn it up. Now, when I finish the shot, that might be club goes in the bag, or I take my glove off, I can turn the torch off. Yeah. Now, if that
Hmm.
torch is going all around, it's going to run out of batteries. Yeah. And that torch is our concentration. That's our energy. So we need to be good at turning it on and turning it off. And that's why I like those physical cues to be part of what you do.
I love that. Like in between shots, have you found an effective thing to, especially during high pressure tournaments,
Mhm.
something to keep their minds off of what's happening? I mean, like it's easy to say to like focus only when you're around the ball and you've got your club on,
Mhm.
you've got the triggers, but it's also, I don't know, every personality is different, but you're also probably muttering to yourself and talking to yourself and maybe, time traveling, as they say, living in the future, living in the past in
Mhm.
between shots. Have you found any sort of effective tools to kind of stay either present or keep your mind off of golf during or any sort of patterns there?
Yeah, I mean every player is really different, but I think that I would say think about things that you'd like to be doing this weekend, or things that your holiday you're looking forward to, or think about like something you got to look forward to. Just try to take your mind elsewhere for a little bit. Obviously sometimes you get in a great playing group and they're chatty and they're great people, and that's the ideal scenario, right? But then sometimes you get in a group with a Faldo and a Tiger and they don't want to talk. So now that situation, now we can't use that anymore. And that's why sometimes players like they go play great when they play with their friends in tournaments. And I love that. But I need you to play well when you're not playing with your friends as well. So because that's their cue, like, hey, I can relax and we chatted and we had a great time and then I got the shot and I was in a good mood and I hit a great shot. Okay, brilliant. If we can do that every week, that would be the dream. But unfortunately, that's not the way. And then when you play golf with players, some are great, some unfortunately aren't. And that's where then we've got to find a situation ourselves within ourselves. I would say look around, look around you, look at the sort of the things that are around you, the beauty that's around us, and try to sort of enjoy that rather than being too internalized, and just focusing golf, 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 golf. Like I said, we've got to be able to switch off in periods of time, and then we've got to be able to switch back on. So every player is different, but try to go somewhere in your head and think about that.
There's a nerdy idea that I've been floating around where I want to teach my son to become a bird watcher and a
Yeah,
like almost like a botanist, so that as
yeah,
he's walking down the fairways, he can just be like, spotting rare birds and looking at different types of trees and like put
yeah.
his mind on that in between the shots because you're all around nature. You might as well. Now, I've made fun of a lot of bird watchers. I don't get it. I don't get going out there for 7 hours with binoculars and be like, wow, there's a spotted breasted something something. It seems
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
waste of time, but a lot
yeah,
of people think golf's a waste of time. They don't know how you can spend 5 hours out on the course walking around chasing a little white ball. So
yeah.
but I think that's like a tool that might work.
Definitely. Yeah, look, I think it's just there's enough around us if we look up. I think too many times we're like this constantly looking down at the floor
Mm.
nowadays, which is really sad. Myself included, unfortunately way too much of what I do is on my phone. So unfortunately I spend way too much of my time tilted down looking at my phone for work emails, for skill lists, for replying to messages, or just for general social. There's always something to distract you. And I think sometimes looking up and looking around us and the beauty that's around us is something we just don't do often enough. So that'll be it. I think that'll be a good start. That should keep you busy for a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. You recently, Mark, you moved back to Dallas, or you moved to
Mhm.
Dallas, and you mentioned Altus earlier in the podcast. For those that don't know, like what is Altus? Where are you right now in Dallas?
Okay, so I'm based in Dallas, Texas. So I actually work at two sites: Trinity Forest, which is down into the south of Dallas, and then I work at Golf Club of the Tribute, which is in the north of Dallas. They're about 45, 50 minutes apart. They're sort of sat between the airport in Dallas, Fort Worth. I work for Altus Performance, which is the brand which was started by Cameron McCormick, and he's the coach of Jordan Spieth. So Cameron's based at the Trinity Forest site. So I work down there with him, Corey Lundberg, and Al Higgs. Those are the guys that are based there. And then I'm working then at Golf Course True mainly with Nick Dunn and Max Kettler up there. So again, I float between the two sites, working with players at all levels, particularly from, I suppose, the more higher level junior through to, high school, college, and pros. I recently came back from the Olympics last year with two clients that I work with there. So yeah, so I'm working between the two sites. And basically what we do is very specialized into elite performance, exactly what I was saying to you earlier on, taking these kids or these college players or these pros and just trying to get them to the most highest level of performance. So it's very, very performance based training compared to your traditional, I suppose, swing coach.
I love that. And yeah, I mean that's they say the company you keep, and you've got great company that you're
I have,
keeping right now. So it's
yeah.
and the results are showing.
Mm.
You've like if you've got the ears and eyes right now of golf parents all throughout the world, what advice would you give them when they're just a part of this journey with their juniors? Like what do golf parents need to know?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just try to support them as much as you can. I know it's really difficult. I've got kids in sport, my own kids in sport as well, and it can be very difficult sometimes when, they're having those days where they're not performing, and it can be all the praise is coming when they're performing well, and there's no praise when they're having those bad days. So I think sometimes just understanding they are developing a skill. They're not tour players, and even the tour players are having plenty of up and down weeks. So be supportive through all their ups and their downs, and really watch the narrative of how you say things. And because these kids are you're the most important person in their lives, right? Especially in those early years. And what you say is gospel. So you've got to be really careful of the narrative that you say to that kid and how that impacts how they feel about themselves and what they think they are. So I think that's one of the biggest things is support them, how you talk to them, and the narrative you use. Give them the opportunity, surround them by great people, but just please let them enjoy the game. I think that's the important thing. If they enjoy it, they'll want to go out there and practice. Even after a bad day, they'll want to go out there and put it right. If they feel like the only way they are going to get congratulated by success, then when they have those bad days, they're not going to have that resolute to be able to push through. So I think that's the biggest thing we can do as parents. It's very difficult to do that sometimes, and sometimes we just we want to take that filter off and just say what's in our heads. But just remember, they're kids, and what you tell them over a period of time becomes a big part of who they are. And I think that's a big one for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, and I think on a very obvious level, we all know the things not to say, but I
Mhm.
think that a lot of parents don't know what to say. If you could, give parents, a couple arrows in their quiver of positive things to say or the way to phrase things, what would you help parents to understand how to better communicate with their kids while during a tournament, before or after the round, whatever it might be?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is the post round bit is the sort of danger zone because it's emotion. They may have been on the bag, or they may have been watching, they may have been frustrated, and it's easy just to come out and just say what they had in their head. At that point, I think just like time it, give it a little bit of time, sit down with them, try not to react in the car. I know it's hard, I've done it myself as a parent. Sometimes, I've sort of, said something like, oh, I should just waited. I should just waited a bit longer. We all do it. I mean, I'm a coach, and sometimes we all make those mistakes. But the key thing is question them afterwards. Say, hey, like, how did that go today? What do you think was? Tell me two things you did really well. Tell me two things you'd like to do better next time. Put it in the kids' court. In the kids' court. Don't just tell them again. It's that. Don't just tell them what you thought. Let the kid become more thoughtful about what they did, and let them lead you rather than you telling them. Okay. And then if they ask your opinion, well, obviously you're going to try to put that away in a cross that's not going to be hurtful to their confidence. So that's an important part for them, is just that questioning afterwards rather than just telling.
Yeah, time and time again, it's that car ride home. Doesn't matter what
Mm,
the sport is.
danger.
That is, like you said, that's the danger zone. That's the red zone right there, in the sense of like it's either making or breaking the child's confidence, the relationship with the parent.
Mm,
Um, you just hear it over and over again how just important and vital that car ride is. So all those parents listening right now, just be as intentional, and if nothing else, just be quiet.
yeah,
At least
yeah,
just
totally.
be quiet. Like
Yeah.
just so that it's not about that. And I'm sure the kid will naturally talk if they want to talk about it. And if not, well, at least you're not saying the wrong thing, which I guess is
Yeah.
better than not knowing what the right thing might be.
I think when the emotion is high, that's the danger zone, and obviously the kids emotionally high. Maybe they haven't played well. Well, they're not trying to go out there and play bad, right? That's the first thing. They're trying their best to do their best out there, but just sometimes we're humans. It just doesn't work, all right? And then we can maybe dissect. Hey, look, what can we do better? Maybe you're up a little bit late last night, or hey, we got a bit late to the practice area. Like what do we do that we could do better next time? That's the discussion you have. Like, but but you've got to be proud of them sometimes when they have those bad rounds. Be like, hey, look, commend them what they did well. I know you were really struggling out there, but I love the way you just kept your head up and you were talking to your partners at the end and you kept a great attitude. I love that. Like try to pick out a positive from it. And then we can also say like, okay, well, next time maybe you got to think about that shot into that pin and what do you think about it? And have an open conversation with them rather than just hitting them with the hammer as soon as they walk in the car.
Mm. Well said. Well said. Listen, Mark, fantastic information. I know so you're involved with Altus, you're in Dallas. If someone's maybe not locally in Dallas, you've got a
Mhm.
great social media. What's the best way for people to kind of get into your ecosystem, to find you on socials and elsewhere?
Yeah. Okay. So I've worked with clients worldwide via Skillist.
Mm,
So that's when they can search for me on there, Mark Govier, working with all different levels of players there. So if anyone wanted to work with me online, have competitive juniors all the way to pros that are on that level, and recreational golfers as well. So then if you want to look on my Instagram, it's Elite Golf Coach, or my website is elitegolfcoach.com. Or again, all of my contact details will be on there. And then just obviously hit me up on one of those, and then hopefully I can sort of give you some input if anyone needs some advice with how to develop their junior to the next level.
perfect. Before we wrap up, is there anything that we missed in this conversation, Mark? Is there anything that we haven't talked about but that we probably should be?
No, I think we've covered a lot of the main points, haven't we? Like I know it's like we could go on forever and we could talk about only 10 hours here and still never cover everything.
That'll
But
be
I
round two.
think that yeah, every round two, yeah, definitely. Well, hopefully when you get down to Dallas, or I'll catch you at the PGA show, that'll be awesome. But I think the biggest thing to talk about is just for anyone out there who's trying to get their kids to be at the elite level, or be the best junior they can be, whatever level that is, just be aware of the things that they do that help them play well, and the things they do they don't let them play well, and just eventually start to build that formula up. And if you do that, they're going to be a lot better players. And the key thing, support them through it. Be their cheering squad, and I think from there they'll enjoy the game more and keep playing and keep loving it.
Yeah, perfect way to end it. Mark, thank you. This was well worth the wait. Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, I'm looking forward to round two.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Appreciate your time.
Hey, golf parents. Before you go, I just want to say thank you for being here. If you found value in this episode, please follow the podcast, leave a short review, or share it with another golf parent who would love it. Every single one helps us grow this movement to raise future champions together. Thank you. See you next week.